The first time I had a puffer jacket, I bought one at a North Face outlet store in San Francisco in mid-90s. And we were just doing a project for Levi's and we were going somewhere cold and it just made sense to get one. But the thing about that jacket was that it was designed to go into really extreme cold climates, and it was fine when we were shooting at Lake Tahoe in December. But when I got back to London, it just became a bit of an albatross, this thing. I was kind of proud of it because it was a beautiful object. But you'd just be sitting on the tube sweating your shack off, it just wasn't a good idea. And I've often wondered how people get away with wearing some of the puffer jackets that they do. So that was my first puffer jacket, and it was a beautiful thing. The North Face was the desirable brand because that was the really expensive one back in the day. But it wasn't practical, and it definitely wouldn't have been practical if you were overheating on a pill. It would have been pretty unpleasant. But if you're also going to be raving in the field all night, it's a perfect thing to have first thing in the morning. When I went to live in New York in 2005, I bought this down sweater from Patagonia. And Patagonia was an interesting kind of brand because I think to me at that time I was just interested in, I was getting more and more commissions abroad and a lot of travel and a lot of kind of intercontinental commissions. So I'd be in like Washington one day and Moscow the next day, and apart from the cultural collisions, the practical collisions of that need to be taken into account. And I like to travel light, I don't do luggage, and I like to be able to get it on my back and have one bag. And the same goes for cameras as well. So everything has to be in this one rucksack, and I generally work with I try to keep it to about 40-litre bag. And the first thing I noticed about this down sweater was just how the weight for warmth ratio was amazing. And it was like, I don't know, it was something ridiculous, like $100 or something. And it's just like, it's a real luxury item, but without any of the luxury bullshit that goes with that. If I won the lottery, I would buy one for all of my friends because it's just such a useful thing. So, and the innovation of the jacket was to take this big bulky down thing and turn it into something that was much smaller and suited a less extreme climate. And I like a lot of performance wear and sportswear because of the kind of lifestyle I lead as a photographer and as someone who doesn't drive, who cycles everywhere. But some of the times you can kind of be over-spec'd and it starts to get a bit silly. And this jacket was the perfect antidote to that original North Face down jacket that I bought. The innovation here really is the fact that it operates as a jacket in spring and autumn, but as a mid-layer in winter. So it's useful in lots of different kind of climates. And it's stowable. You can pack it up. It's got this internal pocket, turns into a really great pillow, and it's just one less thing to carry if you're doing the sort of backpacky, explory kind of thing that I like to do. So many interesting innovations happen with clothing in the military, and then sort of trickle down to the sort of performance wear, and then eventually to the streetwear via sportswear, I suppose. One of the things I love about it is that it's never going to be in or out of fashion. It's just it's a black jacket. You can put it under a waterproof and it becomes a really useful layer, or you can stuff it in your bag and you're out cycling all day, and then in the evening, bingo, when you get back to the campsite, perfect. But I wasn't aware of any other versions of that when I bought it. It was the first time I'd seen it. And I'd seen people around the States wearing them. In the same way that at that point, if you were on a outdoor cold weather shoot in the UK, all the crew would be wearing North Face. And if you were on an outdoor shoot in the US, all the crew would be wearing Patagonia. And I think Patagonia is quite often seen in the US as being a little bit smug and a bit middle class and a bit wanky because it's a bit Democrat as opposed to a bit Republican, and it's a useful urban thing as well. But aside from all of the practicalities of it, it's the way that it's made. It has no inbuilt obsolescence and it has a conscience. So It's made out of recycled fabric. It's made with traceable down. I mean, what people don't realise about these cheap high street versions is that the birds are live plucked, and then the feathers grow back and they're plucked again. I mean, okay, so I'm vegetarian, and this jacket is a byproduct of the food industry in some respects, but it's renewable and it's less painful, I suppose, than the alternative. So yeah, they have this traceable down policy. They don't have any force-fed birds or any live plucked birds in their production chain. And anyway, from that, I just became a bit of a Patagonia maniac. I mean, they have a policy where you send them back and they repair them, and if they can't repair it, they replace it. And it actually works, that policy. This particular jacket, I'm too attached to it. The zip's broken now, and I wear it with a safety pin as a mid layer. I don't wear it as a jacket anymore. But after 10 years, I can handle that. It doesn't bother me. But I don't really want to send it back, so I've had so many good trips. I'm worried that they might replace it if I send it back. It's got a lot of happy memories for me, this jacket. I mean, one of the things that I like about Patagonia and this jacket in particular is that it's there for me, and I can go and buy another one 10 years later on. They still make it. It's so rare that you can find something that's really, really strong and does the job, and then you can go back and buy it again later on. I mean, that's brilliant, isn't it? So fuck innovation. If it's good enough, just keep making it. I think a lot of the innovations that happen are kind of unnecessary. I think this particular innovation of creating a puffer jacket that's lightweight as a down sweater is a really smart thing. And I think that's when Patagonia are smartest. When Patagonia decide to kind of take stuff from the field, as it were, from the performance field, and make it useful for those of us that have less challenging lives but still are looking for kind of some convenient design solutions that last and don't cost the earth and don't fuck up the planet. That's what I'm interested in. I was aware of it as a quality item. I had an eye for that kind of quality item, and I was interested in outdoor clothing from a really young age. My dad worked at RAF Valley in Anglesey in North Wales on mountain rescue, and when I was a kid I used to wear his moleskins +4s and play with his ice axe and what have you. So I kind of had an awareness of the functionality of this kind of stuff. I think when we talk about fashion in relation to performance wear and fashion in relation to sportswear, I think we have to be quite clear about what bit of fashion we're talking about. The bit of fashion that's just about business and selling shit that people don't need and all of that stuff, it's not very interesting, is it? It's just, late capitalism, yawn. However, the other side of fashion, which is to do with style and aesthetics and gender and culture and all of that stuff, is fascinating, endlessly so. And those kind of reinventions and reinterpretations and re-explorations and hybrids and all of the stuff that comes out of that, they can be really fascinating. So I think when, if fashion decides to look at sportswear and you're stupid enough to go and buy the fashion version of something, when you can go and buy the sportswear version of something and get something that's actually better and costs less and lasts longer, so be it. Fashion's interest in style and fashion's interest in sportswear and functionality is not a new thing. So the idea of there being a discourse between fashion and style and show and performance and appearance and function, all that stuff, it's not new. And we can go right back to when the innovation of dandies co-opting country clothes, hunting clothes, riding clothes, and wearing them in the context of the city. I mean, there was serious dress codes around that time: brown shoes in the country, black shoes in the city, blah 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 blah. And as soon as there's a rule, there's going to be some wag that wants to break that rule, and that's where the fun starts, typically, isn't it? When I was a student in Sheffield, and particularly in Manchester, at that time there was a lot of people wearing performance wear, And one of the reasons why they were doing that was because they wanted to wear that boxy 90s profile, but they also wanted to wear colour. And performance wear in the 80s and 90s was some pretty jazzy colours, you know. I don't mind where fashion designers take their leads from or whatever, but I think if anyone's silly enough to buy like a pair of fashion trainers, I mean, it's on their head, isn't it? It's just daft when you can just go and buy a perfectly decent pair of actual performance trainers. I think everything's political. I think it's impossible to avoid the sort of the nuanced structures of the multinational corporations that wheel around us and constantly hem us in. And you know, for me, I choose to buy Patagonia goods because I know that they're signed up to the 1% thing. I know that they're recycling where they can. I know that they're interested in repairing and renewing. I know that they've got an animal welfare scheme. I know that they're using organic cottons. You know, I know that they're thinking about the future. That is political. But that's not the only reason I'm buying it. I'm buying it because it also does the job properly and it lasts. So that in itself is a kind of political statement or a political gesture, if you want it to be. By going into Sports Direct and buying a cheapy version, you know, made in China, that's a different kind of tacit political gesture. And I'm not going to criticise anyone for doing that, because we live in a really weird, horrible time when you've got impoverished people on one side of the planet making crap to sell to impoverished people on the other side of the planet. And that's the politics of our age, that's the transaction. You know, I'm in a fortunate position where I can afford to invest in something that's going to last a bit longer. But if you don't have 3 times as much money to buy something that's going to last 5 times as long in the first place, then you're kind of snookered, aren't you? So those are the kind of politics that interest me.